Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about my January TBR for 2025, and it is just kind of a crazy thing for me to think that that is something that is happening. 2024 really felt like it went by quickly, but we are on to bigger and better things in 2025, and so let's go ahead and talk about what I am going to be reading in the first month, and hopefully things start out with a bang. The first book I'm going to be reading is actually a novella. This is one that I have heard quite a few people talk about, from Jimmy, from the Fantasy Network, Murphy Napier, Joanna, StoryTube, and StoryTube talked about it because this is an Irish book, and I think this is one that kind of made the rounds because of them, and that is Foster by Clara Keegan. This is going to be about a 1.5-hour audiobook, and it is about a young girl who is sent to live with some relatives in rural Ireland. I don't know too much more about it other than that I have heard quite a bit of praise for this book, and it is a short one to get the year started off with, and I'm just kind of excited to see what happens here. I've heard a lot about this author from some of those people, and just kind of want to experience that person for myself, which is always an exciting thing, right? To maybe be a little bit late on the curve, but not so late that people still aren't excited and talking about that author. Next up is another shorter book. This is a 5.5-hour audiobook, but this is The Edge of Tomorrow by Hiroshi. I'm not going to try that last name because I will get it very, very wrong, but this is actually a Tom Cruise movie. I'm sure you have probably at least seen ads for it. It's the one where a soldier is stuck in a time loop during a specific battle, and they kind of die and repeat, die, repeat, live, die, repeat, I think was like the marketing behind Edge of Tomorrow when the movie came out. But I have heard that this book is actually really, really good, and I've actually heard that the movie itself is really, really good. I've heard it's one of Tom Cruise's better movies, but I've never actually seen it. And anytime that I know that there's a book that is a movie is based off of, I normally want to go ahead and read the book first, and then I'll go ahead and watch the movie and kind of compare. I'm going to do that with Misery here eventually when I can find somewhere to stream Misery from where I don't have to pay extra for it, because I'm cheap and I don't want to do that. But that is Edge of Tomorrow. That's going to be one of my sci-fi reads here, and I'm very excited about this one. This is a movie that, like I mentioned, that I wanted to see for probably when it came out, and then just, I don't know, I'm really bad about watching movies, but I am very, very excited to read this book, and the fact that it is only 5.5 hours is pretty nice, and we are kind of continuing with that trend of shorter books here. You'll see they're kind of climbing up in length as we continue, but this is actually a horror read. I think I talked about this in my next 10 horror reads, or the next 10 horror book that I want to read. I think I did a video on that, and this was on there, and that is We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kilwer. It's a 10-hour audiobook, and it is a horror novel about a young couple who, after purchasing a new home, visited by a family that is saying they are former residents of the house, and apparently all kinds of creepy and strange things ensue from there. Now, this one interests me, one, for a couple reasons. There is a country song that I cannot remember who sings it, but there's a song about coming back to somewhere where the person lived, and there's a country song about it, so for some reason that really makes me think of this book. And then I'm also somebody who has moved quite a bit in my life. I have lived in a number of different states, moved from Pennsylvania to Florida, from Florida to North Carolina, and then multiple places in those states. So there's always this idea of going back to some of those places and like seeing the house. Like I have thought about, it's not something I would probably ever do, but it is definitely something I think about, of like, ooh, it would be cool to go back and like walk through a house now that I lived in, 15, 20 years ago, and just kind of see if it's what I remember, how different it is, how big or small it, because your childhood brain isn't always the best formed to come up with some of those things, but it is always something that I think about. So this one has kind of stuck out to me, and I do think it's just an interesting premise for a horror movie. I don't know, is it the family that's visiting causing the horror, or is it the house itself? Is it because they are in the house? Like, what's going on there? And so I'm just interested in that one. And I think this one maybe won a Goodreads Choice Award, or was nominated for one in the horror category. So not that that means a whole lot, because that's basically a popularity contest, but if it's popular, it might be good, and I am looking forward to trying that one out. Next up is a book that I am super excited to read. The first book in the series was my favorite fantasy book of 2024, and if you know what I'm talking about, I am super excited to get to The Blackest Heart by Brian Lee Durfee. The first book was The Forgetting Moon, and like I said, that was my favorite fantasy book of 2024, and so I'm very excited to finally continue on. I think I read that, in October or November, so it's been just a little bit since I have read this, but this is probably my top priority. It's only a trilogy, so I'd really like to read this in January, and then in February go ahead and finish out with The Lonesome Crown. Now, this is quite a longer book, and that is why some of my earlier reads are going to be on the shorter side. This is a 36.5-hour long audiobook. I expect there to be all kinds of political intrigue, betrayal, love, triumph, action, just all of the good stuff. I'm expecting just more from what I got from The Forgetting Moon. You can always go check out that review on the channel if you want to know a little bit more about it, but I am very, very excited for that. I almost am afraid that I'm hyping it a little bit up too much for myself, which is something that happens, but I just really like The Forgetting Moon, so very much hoping that The Blackest Heart delivers very nicely. Now, the next book I am going to just start in January here. I do not expect to finish the fourth book in the Wars of Light and Shadow series by January. It's The Fugitive Prince. This is, like I said, the fourth one, and it is the start of a new arc. So I actually finished the third book in this, The War Host of Vastmark, in early 2024, maybe January or February I finished the first one. I have this pretty handy sheet that actually Jenny Wirtz herself sent me. So this is the start of a new arc here with The Fugitive Prince. And my goal for this year, this is kind of an overarching longer goal, is to finish this arc. So it's 5 books. I think it's doable, but this is going to be my at-night read. It is, that paperback is 670 pages. On the Kindle, it is 724, which is probably what I'll end up reading it on, because I'll probably be reading at night with the lights out and fall asleep probably reading it. So it is probably something that will take me a little bit longer. It just kind of depends. I can get into a really good flow state with Jenny Wirtz's writing, and sometimes, I make a lot of progress all at once, but it really will just depend on how disciplined I am about not like playing on my phone or something and actually reading in bed like I would like to. So that is a big motivator for me to get through those 5 books, and hopefully that will help. I don't know if I will do one every month or what the plan will be there. It will just kind of depend on when I finish it, because I have some other things that I would like to read physically as well. But if you are interested in the series, John from Talking Story is actually doing like this huge buddy read-along thing, and they are starting with book 1 in January. So if this is a series you have wanted to get into, have heard a lot about here on BookTube, now is a good time to go ahead and start. They're going to do one like every 2 months or so. You can go check his channel out, and they've talked about it, and it's a good time to jump on the Jenny Wirtz bandwagon. I'm glad I'm a little bit ahead of the curve when it comes to this, so I can say I was one of the first. And if somehow I finish all of those other than The Fugitive Prince, if I finished The Fugitive Prince in January, I would be blown away by myself. But I will also have 2 other options if I finish my other audiobook reads here early in the month of January. I will either pick up Empire of Silence by Christopher Rocchio. That is the first Sun Eater book. It's a series I've wanted to get to for such a long time. It'll just kind of depend on what I'm in the mood for. And the other option will probably be the 4th Malazan Book of the Fallen book, House of Change. House of Chains, not Change. I need to get back to that series. It's been a little while since I finished Memories of Ice, and it's a series that I want to continue making a lot of progress on. I don't think it's a series that I will finish in 2025, but if I could at least get 3 or 4 more books done, kind of like the Wars of Light and Shadow, if I can get like 5 books done in each of those series this year, I'd be super ecstatic by that. That feels like a lot because they are all pretty long books, but we'll see how all of that goes. Definitely let me know any of your reading plans for novels, because I'm going to transition over really quickly to some manga, and hopefully maybe some of you manga fans can give me a recommendation here. So I am getting ready to finish Dragon Ball Z. A couple of my other series just finished My Hero, and just some other stuff that I am kind of bouncing around reading. I would really like to read Fair and Beyond Journey's End. That is a manga series that I heard about when it first came out and was really intrigued in it, and I just never got around to reading it, but I think that's going to be like my next real focus, that and maybe Dragon Ball Super. Now, my one question is, should I just watch the anime of Frennen, I think is how you pronounce it, or should I go ahead and read it? I have had mixed experiences when it comes to just being a pure manga reader here recently. I stopped watching anime 2 or 3 years ago at this point, and for the most part, I catch some stuff every now and again with some friends. Like I watched all of the Demon Slayer stuff and some My Hero with some of my friends, and honestly, I think especially in those 2 instances, the anime is significantly a better experience than just reading the manga. I started reading manga mostly because I got tired of waiting for anime, and so I would just read it, and then I would go back and watch the anime later. And then I got tired of paying for Crunchyroll, and yeah, so I'm just kind of curious, is the manga good enough to just read the manga, or should I watch the anime for Frennen? And then for Dragon Ball Super, I will probably just read it because I've been reading through Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. I have like 5 chapters left, so I'll finish that here in December of 2024. And then just some other series that I'm kind of dabbling in. Vinland Saga, I'm caught up on that. Berserk, I'm caught on that. Boruto, caught up on that. So whenever those drop a new chapter, I just kind of read it and catch up and stay caught up there. And Vinland Saga and Berserk definitely have like weird drop schedules, so it's not anything too consistent there. And then I also started Kaiju number 8 here in 2024. So that's something that I'll need to continue just kind of slowly chipping away. The other big one for me is One Piece. I'm about 166 chapters into One Piece, and I'm like right at the cusp where everybody tells me it gets like super good. And so I've been waiting for that for a while, and maybe now that I finish a couple other series, it's one that I can slowly just read a few chapters a week. I don't really have plans on catching up, though that would be pretty awesome, but I just haven't been hooked by that series yet. So maybe if I get hooked, it'll be a series that I read through quite a bit. But those are all of my reading plans for January of 2025. Now that I've sat down and talked about them out loud, they feel very ambitious, and I feel like I'm going to probably fail pretty spectacularly, at least on some of these goals. We'll see. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully I surprise myself and read a lot more. But definitely let me know what you are going to be starting the year with here in 2025. I'd love to know what you're reading. Let me know if you're going to follow along with any of the things I'm reading, if you are going to maybe start towards the Light and Shadow with John over at Talking Story. I know that's going to be a pretty popular buddy read, and I've seen a lot of buzz about it, which I'm super, super happy that's happening, because it's a very underrated series and one that I think, deserves that spotlight. But like I said, that's all for me. Remember, read what you want when you want.